Good morning and welcome to a very special interview show of the Prode. Today, it's my pleasure to have Ambassador Talmiz Ahmad sir on our show. Talmiz Ahmad sir has served as the ambassador to Saudi Arabia, Oman, and UAE, and he was also the Additional Secretary for International Cooperation in Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas in 2004 to 2006. Sir is here with us to discuss the ongoing Afghanistan situation and share his kind views on the topic. Thank you very much, sir, for taking out the time, and a very warm welcome to the Prode.
Thank you for your invitation.
Sir, I would like to start by asking, how do you see the United States exit from Afghanistan? Was it too sudden or it was pre-planned?
It is very difficult to understand American policies and approaches because they give the impression of extraordinary confusion, lack of planning, lack of foresight. For example, in this particular case, President Biden moved into the White House in January. He waited up to April to make his first statement about American withdrawal. Donald Trump had said that the Americans will withdraw on 1st May. Biden extends it to September 11. And then removes all the American troops by the end of July without planning for the evacuation of the American citizens and others who are there. I mean, if I had been in his place, the first thing I would do, keep the troops there because the Taliban were not attacking Americans and had not done so for 20 months. I would have kept the troops there and planned the systematic movement of people out of Kabul airport so that they would go away, and only after that withdrawn the American troops. What he did was withdrew the troops first and then got into the mess of the logistical mess of getting rid of evacuating people, had to rush several thousand troops further back into Kabul. By that time, it was too late. And you know what all happened. It's an absolute fiasco. And when there is total chaos and fiasco, that is where the jihadis strike. And that is what they did. Islamic State was waiting for just such an opportunity. They had the suicide bombers and they wreaked havoc there and killed 183 people and 13 Americans among those. The highest American casualties in several months, in several years. Is this the conduct of a superpower, of a serious country that has been located in Afghanistan for 20 years? Is this how they conduct themselves? I think we have every reason to be seriously worried about policy making in that country.
Okay, sir. So, how big of a role does Islamic State has in Afghanistan? What's their influence and impact in the internal politics of Afghanistan?
Islamic State Khorasan, as they call themselves, is a very minor presence in Afghanistan, a nearly insignificant presence. It emerged in the context of the emergence of the Islamic State in Iraq. At that time, large numbers of jihadi groups in different parts of West Asia and North Africa were allured by the idea of the caliphate. And many of them, for various reasons, internal reasons, were also splintering. So the so-called Islamic State Khorasan has nothing to do with the Islamic State at Raqqa or Mosul. It is a product of the splintering of certain elements from the Afghan Taliban, but more importantly, from the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan. Overwhelmingly, these are Afghan and Pakistani elements. They are extremely zealous, extremely violent and brutal. And they carried out a number of attacks in the early stages. But the Taliban disliked them and the Pakistanis disliked them. So there was a massive retaliation so that they are now confined to a very narrow space in Pakistan, in Afghanistan. Having said this, we must never underestimate jihadi groups because their mindset is one of proactive violence. They look for opportunities. As you know, even though the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria has been demolished, they still carry out lethal attacks from time to time in both Iraq and Syria. So we cannot underestimate the capacity for violence still remains, but they are not a significant force. And I would imagine that the Taliban, once they have consolidated themselves, they would be very easily able to get rid of this force when they are over the next few weeks or months.
Okay, sir. Another important element in Afghanistan politics is Northern Alliance. So Taliban claims victory over Panjshir Valley in Afghanistan. So how do you see this development? And there have been several reports that Pakistani Air Force has helped Taliban in doing so. What are your views on that?
I think it is incorrect to refer to them as the Northern Alliance. Northern Alliance existed in Afghanistan in the 1990s. It was headed by Ahmad Shah Massoud, and it was a very formidable force. It was able to hold its own against the Taliban. And indeed, that strip of territory never came under Taliban control. At that time, the Northern Alliance was supported by Iran, Russia, and India. And there was a border open with with Tajikistan and Uzbekistan, and therefore it was regularly supplied by these three countries. None of that exists today. What happened is that Ahmad Shah Massoud's son, Ahmad Massoud, announced that there would be a resistance. And within a very short while stated that there is not going to be any resistance because he has no funding and he has no army. He said the maximum I have are 6,000 people. Around that time, Amrullah Saleh, who used to be the vice president of under Ghani, Ashraf Ghani, suddenly announced he's the president of the country. I mean, a completely ridiculous statement. A president with no country, no army, no security, and a ridiculous individual. Now, what is the difference? There is no Iran support for this. There is no Russian support. And I'm not sure India is wanting to get involved with that. The Taliban very quickly sent their elements there and have taken back Panjshir Valley.
Okay.
Ahmad Massoud has announced that they have now moved to the mountains. You see, the tactics of the Taliban this time were different. Initially, at the early stages of their taking back their country, they controlled the border post with Uzbekistan and Tajikistan. So that the supply route for these fighters wasn't there at all. Secondly, they do not get the support from Russia. Russia indeed has made it very clear they want to work with the new Taliban government. And the Iranians have had relations with the Taliban from at least 2007, if not earlier. So I'm not sure that we should ever take this movement seriously. I have not taken them seriously from the beginning. And what Ahmad Shah was attempting, what Ahmad Massoud was trying to achieve was to have some kind of role in the new order. That has been made very clear. You stay where you are and you're not going to have any role here.
Okay, sir. Another important element that is discussed is the China element. So how big of a role does China have to play in Afghanistan? Like why they have openly supported the Islamic Emirates?
The Chinese are strategic thinkers and they are long-term planners. Their concern with regard to this region, all across from Pakistan to the Mediterranean, has been with regard to extremism. Because they do not want the contamination of extremism to affect their own Muslim community, the Uyghur community, which is a restive community. The Uyghurs participated with the Al Qaeda in the global jihad in Afghanistan in the 1980s, and that was a wake up call for the Chinese. So, since then, China has taken interest in this region. As far as Afghanistan is concerned, with the help of Pakistan, they built up ties with the Taliban at least from 2010. So they have relations with the Kabul government of Karzai and then Ashraf Ghani, but they also have direct links with the Taliban as well. Initially, China entered Afghanistan on the basis of certain economic contracts, to mine for mining lithium, etc., copper mining, sorry. But they made no progress at all because they assessed the ground situation as being unstable because of the Taliban activity. So they made it very clear that they would not progress with their economic inputs until there was stability. In their interaction with Taliban, they gave a certain incentive for peace. And this is that we will develop infrastructure for you. And this is good for Taliban. So the Chinese are not seeking a military role in the country. They don't intend to send their soldiers into this country and take bullets into their back, as the Americans did so foolishly. They want to have a stable entity where there is focus on development, and they want to be participants in that. So that is the statement they have made. About a year ago, it was a front page story in Financial Times where the Chinese said to the Taliban that we will support, we will fund all your infrastructure, all your connectivity projects, the roads, the railways, etc., which is good. It's good for the country. So this is where the Chinese whole future is. They have worked very hard in this regard. They have kept a very low key. They have met people. They have convened meetings. I should also mention to you that there is a certain cooperation here between China and Russia. Russia brings a separate strength and interest to the table. Russia is also concerned about the contamination of its own extremists, that the Chechens, and there have been Chechen fighters involved both with Al Qaeda as well as with Islamic State. But Russia's concerns extend further into Central Asia as well. Central Asia is viewed by Russia as its very significant geopolitical space. And therefore, if there is extremist activity in, say, Uzbekistan or Tajikistan, Russia has concerns there as well. So there are, you could say, shared concerns between China and Russia. China has the project relating to the Belt and Road Initiative. And Belt and Road Initiative obviously needs a very stable region all the way across West Asia, Central Asia, and West Asia. So I think there is a degree of cooperation here. Russia is also plugged in very closely with the Taliban, at least from the last 20 years, and they have very good familiarity with what is happening on the ground. Hence, you will see their statements tend to be very supportive of the Taliban as of now. So I think you are seeing a, a larger geopolitical initiative in the region. And this is Russia and China have been working for several years while the Americans were fooling around with their armed forces and murdering people right and left in Iraq and in Afghanistan and in Libya. These two countries, no use of military force, have penetrated very deeply all across Eurasia and built up connectivities with Eurasia, Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Turkey.
Okay, sir. It will be injustice if we don't talk about India and talk about China and Russia. So why is it so that India hasn't taken any proper stand in the whole situation? And what will be the impact of the Taliban takeover in Afghanistan on the valley?
I think you should be a little more fair to the Indian side. India is committed to the welfare of Afghanistan, but the route we chose was to support the Kabul government, which was, according to me, the correct route. There is nothing in common between India and the Taliban. Anyone who tells you today, talk to the Taliban, talk to the Taliban. My question to those people is, talk about what? What do I offer? Whenever two people sit and talk to each other, there has to be something on the table. I should offer you something that you are interested in, and you should offer me something that would appease me, that would fit mine. There is nothing as of now. Because Taliban don't need weapons from India. They don't need support from India. They have got full support from the Pakistanis and the Saudis and other Gulf countries for several years. They are engaged with the Americans, who treat them with great respect. They are deeply engaged with Qatar. They have got relations with China and Russia. India doesn't fit into this scenario. We did the right thing. We are concerned about the Afghan people. Therefore, we gave them development projects. We gave them infrastructure connectivity projects. And we spent a lot of Indian money, never asked for anything back for us. We contributed to the people. And these contributions will remain because they are solid contributions. A hospital, a bridge, a road, a parliament building,
Even
all of
Salma
these
Dam, sir.
are and a dam. All of these have long-term value. See, I want to remind you, the relationship between Afghanistan and India is not from today or yesterday. It's for several hundred years. We've had a symbiotic relationship. And do recall that till partition, we actually had a common border. The Durand Line was created in 1893, and our relationship predates the Durand Line. As you know, in our memory, we have a lot of connection with the Afghans They used to come here to sell carpets and to sell dry fruits. You know Tagore's story, Kabuliwala, and the connectivity is very deep, and it will remain. Afghans, all of them, and I would mention to you, except for the most rabid and maniacal Taliban, except for a few of them, overwhelmingly, I would say to you, the Afghan people have a lot of goodwill for India. Therefore, what I recommend at this stage is, and this is the policy government of India is following, is in the international relations terminology, it is called strategic patience. See, a situation in which you can make no useful contribution, either for the interest of the people concerned or for your interest, it is far better to stay out. Let the situation evolve. Today, as I'm speaking to you, there is how many uncertainties there are. I mean, you don't even know whether the Taliban government, the interim government that has been structured in Kabul, is going to survive. The Taliban have a very long history of internecine conflict. They were kept together by the Pakistanis, but very with great difficulty. They united in the times of war, but will they be able to unite in the times of governance? We don't
Yes.
know.
Even
So we
there have
don't
been
know so
reports.
much about so many uncertainties still remain to
Yeah.
be addressed and resolved. Far better for India to remain low key and to watch the situation evolve.
Even there have been reports that there has been some conflict between Team Mullah Brother and Team, Haqqanis.
I know there is no, these are suggestions. We don't have hard information. As you know, those of us who are looking at the situation, we would imagine that there would be a kind of divide here. If I would tell you very frankly, the divisions would be between the politicians who were negotiating at Doha and the warriors who were fighting on the ground. Among the warriors, you would have divisions as well. And there are those who are particularly close to Pakistan. Pakistan is the crucial role player here. Pakistan invested a lot in Afghan affairs, at least from the beginning of 1980. Beginning of so for Pakistan, it's a 40-year effort to ensure that a government of its choice is finally installed in Kabul at the head of a united Afghanistan. It's an effort of 40 years. So they have the interim government, to my mind, has the fingerprints of Pakistan written all over it. The Sirajuddin Haqqani, the Haqqani network has been a particular protege of the Pakistanis. They are there right in the forefront. And Mullah Yaqub, the son of Mullah Omar, has been very close to the Pakistanis as well as to the Haqqanis for a long time. Baradar, on the other hand, has been on the other side. Baradar is an independent personality. He is also a warrior in his time, though perhaps not as effective as Haqqani. But the fact is that he was independent. He tried to be independent of the Pakistanis. In 2010, he initiated a dialogue with Karzai without Pakistani approval. The Pakistanis arrested him and kept him in incarceration for 8 years. He was unleashed only in 2018 because of his standing and his mind, etc. He led the dialogue with the Americans, but the Pakistanis will never allow him to have real power in the country. The token position of deputy prime minister is thoroughly meaningless because he doesn't deliver to Pakistan what they want. He's too independent a personality.
Okay, sir. So, sir, talking about Pakistan, so recently Taliban has said that the Afghans oppose the fence erected by Pakistan along the Durand line. So, what are your thoughts on the same, and what are your views on Lieutenant General Faz Hamid visiting Afghanistan a few days back?
First, about the ISI chief's visit. The ISI chief's visit had two purposes to my mind. One, it was a very high profile visit. It's very rare for an intelligence chief to be so high profile. It was done deliberately. Photographs all over the place, etc. It was the signal was triumph that we have won. A 40-year effort has now fructified, and my presence here is to signal to you that in Pakistan is the winner today. That is why he landed in such a high profile situation in Kabul. The second was more mundane and more immediate: government formation. Pakistan has controlled the Taliban very tightly from the very beginning. Whether it was before 1994 when they were unleashed in Afghanistan, or it was after 9/11, within a few months of 9/11, the ISI was already engaged with the Taliban. And if the Taliban could then regroup and get weapons and get training and then go back and fight in Afghanistan initially from 2002 and then find sanctuary in Pakistan, entirely this was managed by the ISI. This is well documented in international sources. So it's not that I'm speaking out of order, out of place. This is the background. So his visit was to make clear. The second was to structure the government that would ensure that Pakistani interests remain paramount. No pandering to all those loose remarks made by various people, inclusive government. The Pakistani, what inclusive? We fought, we won. End of story. So he's not going to get into any of this inclusive business. And therefore, the government that has emerged is, as I said, 100% structured by Pakistan. That is the background of this visit. Now, the other question you put to me was about the fence. Now, the Pakistanis have a problem which is going to become possibly a little more serious. When the Pakistanis got involved with the Afghan affairs from the global jihad from 1980 onwards, the border between Pakistan and Afghanistan became a soft border. Now, this border is a very sensitive border, constructed in 1893 by Durrand, who was foreign secretary in India and had gone across to negotiate this border with the ruler Shah Abdul Rahman. It is a very weird border. It is more as weird as the Radcliffe Award that divided India and Pakistan, because it showed no knowledge of or sensitivity to what is happening on the ground. On a small scale map with a thick pen, you draw a line on that map. It has divided the Pashtun people very deeply. And as my colleague Rajiv Dogra has said, it is a wound in the heart of the Pathan people, the permanent wound. Now, it became soft because it suited Pakistani interests for these people to go back and forth. They are one people, by the way. Pathan people, though they are divided into clans and tribes and have frequent conflicts with each other, at the end of the day, they are ethnically and linguistically one people. So you have this. So that border became a soft border. But Pakistan has a security concern. A soft border is not good for Pakistan. You have to be able to control and manage the movement of people, because you don't know. Pakistan nurtured jihad and supported jihad in Afghanistan, but doesn't want those jihadis to come into Pakistan. So there was this business of the fence, and a fence has been erected. But the problem with the fence is not only it is an obnoxious thing by itself; it is also mined, so people can get blown up. So the no Afghan government over the last 120 years has recognized the Durand line. Even Mullah Omar, 100% the creature of Pakistan. At the end of the day, he's a patriotic Afghan and did not accept the Durand line. The Pakistanis pleaded with him, put a lot of pressure on him, but he did not. No Pathan, no Afghan in Kabul has ever recognized the Durand line. And this will remain a serious problem for the Pakistanis in the months to come, because the Pathans have got used to a soft border. It's a very long border. It's quite porous in places. It's not easy to control and man. So we are going to see a degree of activity. The other problem for Pakistan linked with this is the extremist elements. That if you have extremist elements being nurtured in Afghanistan, there is a news report, I'm not sure about its authenticity, that there are possibly 10,000 foreign fighters in Afghanistan. I don't know. Islamic State, they say 2,000, Al Qaeda, 200, and the balance are the Uzbek and Tajik and Uyghur and Chechen, etc. We don't know. We don't have the exact breakup. and these are throwaway figures. There's no accurate, study. But even if there are even a much smaller number than that, if you were sitting in Islamabad today, you would be terrified about the movement of these people. There are also reports that those extremists who have been fighting in Iraq and Syria for some time, they are thrilled with the Taliban success, and they would like to move to this beautiful sanctuary. The Islamic State characters who are roaming around the desert of Syria would find in Afghan, they think they will get a sanctuary here and go back to the good old days of Al Qaeda and Osama bin Laden, etc. So these are very dangerous developments. They are dangerous, of course, for the region as a whole, but particularly dangerous for the countries that share a border with Afghanistan. Pakistan, number one, China, Central Asian republics, and Russia and Iran. So when you play with extremism, the same fire comes finally and burns you.
Okay, sir. Like I would like to conclude by asking, what does the future hold for Afghanistan?
See, as I mentioned to you, there are numerous areas of uncertainty. We do not know if the government will hold. There is a long history of Afghans after a major victory over a foreign force, then spent several years fighting each other. Since the time of the Zahir Shah administration, we have not had a government in Kabul that would brought peace and stability to the country. After the Soviets withdrew in 1989, for 5 years, the Afghan warlords and their political mentors fought each other. No Pakistani was involved, no Russian, no Al Qaeda, no Arab. Afghans and Afghans alone killed each other in their thousands, destroyed each other's cities. There was a bombardment of Kabul. So, in this background, there is no there is no history which would suggest to me that these people will be able to work with each other. That is one very major area of concern. The connected problem will be what will be their ideology? What will be? They say Sharia. Nobody knows what is Sharia. What kind of Sharia? Saudi Arabia follows Sharia, UAE also follows Sharia. And yet the two countries are very different from each other. What kind of Sharia they will follow? Will it be the Wahhabi Sharia of Saudi Arabia, which the Saudis themselves have given up now? Or will there be a modicum of moderation? 20 years is a long time. I'm willing to give these people a long rope because I'm not going to say that they will simply replicate what they were doing in 96 and 98, but we don't know. The third will be their capacity for governance. It's not been tested. Are they able to run a country? A warrior is not necessarily an administrator. An administration, governance involves finance, agriculture, industry, bureaucracy. And then I have another question about the security. You do not have an integrated security apparatus in the country. The police force has disappeared. The armed forces are withering away. These people have come as militia. Will they be able to manage the security of the country? And finally, will they be able to manage the unity of the country? It's a diverse country. Like all countries in the world, you do not have the same people, or even if you have the same people, you have internecine quarrels with each other all the time. The point is here you have a Pathan, of course, but you also have Tajik and Uzbek and Hazara. You have sectarian differences. You have Sunni and you have Shia. And then you have the issue of how to deal with women. So all of these are issues which about which we have no answer, and we really need to wait and watch. I'm not sure the Taliban themselves as of today have this answer because they are themselves surprised at the speed with which they could just walk through. Everyone else had thought, even American Joe Biden said that there is an Afghan army 300,000 strong, which is the best army in the world. And that army never existed except in his imagination. And the president ran for his life before the Taliban could come into his capital. If this is the situation, then you have the speed with which things have happened, have caught many of us by surprise, and we need to, and therefore we are struggling to get answers, which is why they have done an interim government. It's not a regular government. You finally need to have a constitution. Constitution itself will be a major platform for debate and discussion and differences of opinion. What the positive sign is that the economy is in a shambles. Malnutrition, poverty, near total breakdown of the economy. And the country has been dependent on foreign assistance to the extent of 50% for several years. It has the Taliban have depended on opium revenues of several hundred million per year for several years as well. So in this background, what are we going to do? So you could have moderation, quote unquote moderation, because you're a landlocked country and you need to have normal ties with all your neighbors, and none of them is going to invest in your country if you're not stable and moderate. Therefore, that would be one reason why you could have a government that really wants to govern in a sensible manner that would subserve the interests of the Afghan people. But it remains to be seen, as I said, and we need to wait a little longer. India's policies in this regard are good. I think strategic patience is the answer in an environment of uncertainty.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your insightful views and taking out the time and speaking to us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I wish you all the best. Keep
Thank
in
you
touch.
so much.
Bye.